Thanks for the introduction. Sorry, I have no French at all as well. So
That's okay.
I'll try to speak slowly as well. I think I'm from Ireland, so we speak very quickly. I'll try and make sure I slow down for everyone. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about GPS use in professional rugby and how we use it in Leinster Rugby. So I think everyone here uses GPS themselves every day without even knowing it. I got a taxi from the airport to my accommodation last night, and the taxi man put in my address, and he used the sat nav to find his way to my hotel. If anyone else here runs or tries to stay fit and healthy, they might track how far they're running using an app in their mobile phone, and that tells them how far they're running, and that uses GPS as well. If you're unfortunate to have lost your iPhone or have it stolen, you can actually find where it is using GPS technology as well. So it's in everyday use, and just so everyone's aware of what it is in rugby now as well, and what we try to use it for. So for us, it's about trying to find out how players get from point A to point B. And we try to track this over every training session, every week, every month, and the full season. But actually, more importantly, it's their movement pattern from point A to B. So how quickly do they do this? Do they accelerate, decelerate, stop? Are they walking? And this over time gives us actually really good information. So the GPS antenna, alongside tons of other accelerometers and really good technology, is packed into a small GPS unit, which is smaller than this clicker, or the same size as my phone. And that's worn in the back of the jersey, if you can see there. So this is a really good way. It's a non-invasive way of collecting information from our athletes. They barely even realize it's there. They just turn it on, put it in the jersey themselves, and then we collect tons of information on them. So in terms of actually getting buy-in from those guys, they don't mind because they don't even notice themselves wearing it. I suppose the first thing the first thing that everybody uses it for is trying to reduce injury risk. So we want to know, why is this important, or is it important, and then how is it important as well. So predominantly, the first use that everyone uses GPS for is workload monitoring. Sean Williams and his colleagues in Bath University did a really interesting study 2 years ago, and they looked at the association of, I hope you can see this on the slide, of injury burden and league points, and they found a negative association. So they found that basically the more days injured resulted in less league points, which is really important. They also found they were rated, or clubs were rated lower with higher injury days as well. So for us, and for everyone I think in team sports, this is with rugby union, but this is really important information. So they found that a reduction in 42 days of injury per 1,000 hours was associated with 3 league points. So if you could reduce your injury burden by 42 days per 1,000 hours, that resulted, or it was associated with 3 league points. So this is huge. Basically, keep your best players fit, and you're going to get more points in the league table. So this is about 2 years ago, actually. We did a little bit of a literature review as well, and we looked at some of the research looking at injury risk and workload. So how much training and playing loads are on our athletes. And basically these 4 dots, if you can see them there, sorry, these are research studies done in different sports. A lot of research was showing that a high workload was associated with a high risk of injury. So if you do too much, you're at a high risk of injury. What we also started to see was that actually a moderate workload was associated with a lower risk of injury in rugby union. And interesting enough, we found that a low workload was associated with a high risk of injury. So what we found was this sort of U-shaped relationship. Now, it's not as perfect as this, but if you can see the kind of U-shaped relationship where there's this optimal zone of workload. So what our logic was that a lower training load was an inadequate stimulus of training, and this put our athletes at more risk of injury. We also found that too much training caused too much fatigue in our athletes. And what we sort of suggest, or we base our decisions on, is that there's this protective area, or this moderate training load, that our players get fit enough to perform the weekend, but also aren't at risk of injury. So after we did this, we've actually seen more research come through in the last 2 seasons, but they all have these consistent themes. So this was a study done on Gaelic football players in Ireland, if anyone knows what Gaelic football is. And they found that the weekly number of sprints performed had an association with injury. But again, there was this U-shaped relationship that there's a moderate optimal training zone to do with workload. Tim Gabbett as well, if anyone's heard of him, is a sports scientist who's done tons of work associating workload to injury, and he again found the same thing or similar patterns. So these themes are pretty consistent across the board for different sports and different metrics. So when we found the sprint study from Malone on the previous slide here, we tried to get this message across to the players and coaches and try to get them to understand it as well. So rather than talk about data and numbers and different stats to them, we just simply put it as we wanted them to sprint a little bit more often. So we pitched the bolt of the week. Now, I know you laugh and this seems childish, but we get really good buy-in with the players from this. So from a sports scientist point of view, I look at research and I look at, okay, I want my players to perform X amount of sprints per week and track this over time. But for them, they just need to know that they're running fast. So to create a bit of competition, and rugby players are extremely competitive. They just want to be ranked and they want to be the fastest and the quickest and the best at everything. So every week, we put up a bolt of the week, and this encourages them. They get really good buy-in. This encourages them to sprint, to not be afraid of sprinting. But from our point of view, we get injury reduction, or injury risk reduction, and we get performance benefits. The players are getting faster, and we're hopefully having less injuries. So I suppose there's two sides with that. I look at things a little bit differently from my end, but to try pitch it to the players, this is how we do it. I suppose, okay, so what else? So I've talked a little bit about workload and injury risk in rugby, and that's what we use GPS for. But what else can we do? So again, about 18 months ago, we sort of said, okay, can this actually improve our performance? Is it just a workload measure, or what else can we get from it? So what we tried to do was relate this stuff to language that our players and coaches could understand. So rugby is very different to soccer or to our Australian rules football in that it's a little bit less to do with running. So there's lots of contact, lots of static activity, lots of things that potentially people mightn't have as good an understanding of. So we tried to go, okay, if we're saying to our coaches that our players aren't working hard enough, we need to make sure that we have confidence in what we're saying. So we related our running meters on the bottom to our rugby involvements along the y-axis. And we found for all positions that there was a really strong relationship between how much running guys were doing in matches and their involvements in games. So this for us is brilliant in trying to communicate and educate our coaches and players. We could confidently say that within certain scenarios in rugby matches and trainings, that the more people are running, the harder they're working. So this is brilliant for us. So rather than, again, we showed them some of these graphs, but rather than that, we just pitched our running distance as a measure of work rate. So those words resonate better with players and our playing group as well. The next question we tried to figure out was, okay, well, it's giving us a good measure of work rate. It's helping reduce injury risk, but actually can it differentiate between certain scenarios and games, and can it be a performance measure? So in rugby, hopefully everyone can understand what I'm saying here. We looked at the attacking 22 entry. So that's basically when our team gets into the attacking 22 zone, and this is the zone just before scoring a try, or trying to score a try. So we looked at running meters per minute and running intensity. And we found no difference in running intensity between successful and unsuccessful entries. However, when we looked at high-speed running intensity, so basically how players running at faster speeds, we found that there was twice the high-speed running intensity in successful entries versus unsuccessful entries. So this was actually differentiating between performance for us. So we found that a higher speed of running increased our likelihood of success in this specific scenario. So for us, we fed back to the coaches and players on this. They found it hopefully as interesting as I did, but we started doing some scenarios in training, reporting specifically to individuals in training as well, and we could highlight who's actually working hard enough in certain scenarios as well to increase their likelihood of success. Like I said, so the bolt of the week is one way that we report data to players. We try, again, report it in simple graphic ways. So this is a chart that we would report from training. And for me, as a sports scientist, I would talk about high-speed running efforts, but to the players, I want to make sure that they can understand and they can relate that to something they do on field. So one of the ways that we termed it was their intent to run quick. Now this is something that tied in with the coaches as well. So again, all of our athletes are competitive, so we wanted to rank basically all of our positions with this metric, and this is one of our key metrics that we look at. So I suppose what I look at and what coaches and sports scientists look at is sometimes a little bit different to players, but we try to simplify it as much as possible because sometimes less is more and less is better. Okay, so talk to you about managing injuries, and unfortunately injuries still do occur, but I think what we try to do is if an injury happens, we try to learn from it, and we look back at what could potentially be associated with that injury. Were there certain factors that could have actually helped us identify the injury happening before it did? So could it be potentially a workload-related injury from GPS measures? Does he have a previous injury that's predisposing him to be at higher risk? Or is there external factors as well? So is he stressed? Is he up late at night? And what we try to do then is learn from that. So if an individual has got an injury if he's done X amount of running distance in a week, we can now associate a threshold of workload with him. And we can use this to try and manage him to try to prevent injuries happening in the future. So GPS also plays a massive, massive part in us returning players from injury. So what we'll do is we'll sit down with physios and coaches and we'll try map out a game that an athlete's going to target to come back. So potentially for a hamstring injury in 2 weeks' time, for example. And we'll start from the game and work backwards. So sometimes we might suggest that he actually doesn't play the entire game. Now that doesn't go down too well with the coaches sometimes, but we could potentially in some scenarios we do that. But working back from the game, we want our players to get through a full training session at least before the game. So the final session before team training, we look at certain GPS variables that show, okay, well, we think compared to the other people in their position that they're ready to perform on the weekend. We also like to get them through a couple of training sessions, and we sometimes, upon reintegration, we manage some of their workloads. So if we know that, okay, this player is going to cover 6 kilometers the total distance in this session, we don't want him to do that much, we might say to the coaches before the training session, okay, let's take him out of this part of training and reduce his workload before the following session. And we also have a period of time where the athlete doesn't do any rugby and he's running. So we have to ask ourselves a few of these questions. So how severe is the injury? How much running can he actually do? How much does he need to do to prepare him for the game as well? And one of the things we're big on in Leinster is trying to return to perform and not just to return to play. So we look at trying to develop physical qualities during this period of injury. So if someone's lacking aerobic fitness, can we actually get him fitter than what he was before the injury? And also we do have to factor in external pressures and time. So sometimes the coach goes, okay, I want him back next week, but the physio says, oh no, 3 weeks. So we have to try to get a balance between returning someone from injury too quickly and trying to develop physical qualities as well. So again, just to highlight, our focus on return to perform as opposed to return to play. So getting people back ready to perform at the highest level. So in a short summary, I suppose, the 3 major areas that we look at for GPS and Professional Rugby Union is trying to reduce risk of injury. That's massive for us because we've seen how important it is to points tally and keeping our fittest best players on the field. Trying to improve our readiness to perform. So we know that running and GPS metrics are actually related to work rate, and we know that in certain scenarios they can actually differentiate between success. And it also plays a massive part in our return from injury as well. So those 3 areas as a key is how we use GPS in Leinster Rugby. Hopefully that was in some way informative and helpful to you guys. If there's any questions or any discussions, I'd love to chat to people afterwards as well, so don't be afraid. Thanks a minute.
Hi, good morning, and thank you very much for hosting us today. We wanted to give a bit of a spotlight to Peter Leinster Rugby because this just illustrates, I would say, the daily routine of the workforce at Catapult. We're a bit more than 200 people, and a very large part of those people are daily engaging with the clubs, with our customers, with the sports scientists, helping them find patterns and ways to better perform. So I'm going to give you a 5 minute, because that's what I've got, so 5 minutes and 33 seconds to give you a quick heads up on why I'm here. I joined the company 6 months ago to help the group keep being a highly innovative and disruptive force in the world of sport performance. Sorry. Okay, can we go to the first line, maybe? Sorry for that.
C'est normal, avec une catapulte, on peut accélérer beaucoup de choses, Benoît. Vous allez voir, tout va se remettre en ordre dans la machine dans quelques secondes.
Pas de souci. Les joies du direct, c'est ça?
Ouais, c'est ça.
Ah. Ok, voilà, on y est. Donc, je vais sorry, I'm going to speak in English. So, I think important for me to share with you today are a couple of things. Why we are different. You know, what is it that is setting us apart from what you would call the wearable tech industry in sports science? Why our teams are winning, and what are we planning to do for our partners and customers and teams and players to keep performing better? So I think the first thing is that the company is truly rooted in science. So we're a Melbourne-based company. It's been founded 10 years ago. We publicly listed, in Melbourne, basically. And we're not just a new kid on the block. It's just that, we've got a decade worth of science that has been proven and endorsed by, this is a little bit outdated, 250 teams across the world. Now it's probably closer to 1,500 teams and 30,000 athletes who are using our systems. And, you would recognize some of the, most prominent teams in the world. So I think this is extremely important that we start with the science, and you might be familiar with some of the other players, I would say, in the consumer space, like wearable tech such as Fitbit and some others. They are currently struggling because they haven't started from the science, and I think this is why Catapult is so singular, is that we started there, and now we're going to get towards a bit more a broader audience, I would say. We're really truly making a difference. So Peter spoke about, injury risk mitigation. And this is just an illustration. It's been published last week by the English Premier League Association. It just shows the teams who suffer from the least injuries, so in terms of number of days. And basically, circle in red are 3 of the 7, Catapult teams that, we kindly support in Premier League. And of course, you've got Chelsea, who had a record low, won the Premier League. Last season, the record low was Leinster Football Club, and also won the Premier League. So I think, I'm not here to pretend that it's less injuries equal you win the championship, of course, but I think it doesn't hurt, right? It just helps, and as Peter said, it is a crucial part of the story, of the success story. So I think this is what kind of sets us apart, is we're really rooted in science, and we're making a difference for our customers. We help them win. What are we planning to do to keep doing so? So I think as Raoul said earlier, performance is not just about how you move on the pitch, is how you touch the ball, is how you move without the ball, is how you've been sleeping, if you're stressed, anxious, mentally prepared. So one big part of our strategy is going to be to own more of the technology stack at the elite level. So, what I mean by that is that we're currently really well placed on, GPS-based technologies. We've acquired last July a Boston-based company called Exos Digital, for pretty large sum of money, close to $100 million. And they are the undisputed leader in North America in video analytics. And we're looking into video analytics, computer vision very, very closely. But, we're also looking into some other areas such as sleep, wellness, nutrition, athlete management system. So we might carry on, acquiring a couple of companies, but more importantly, we're planning to open up our systems for smaller companies and startups to start exchanging data set and flows with our different software layers. So I think this is the first part of our strategy, horizontal integration at the elite level. And then the second part of our strategy, I would say for the next 12 to 18 months, is going to be to start going down the ladder. So now that we have a large part of elite sport, of the elite sports segment, we want to start going further down and offering our science, knowledge, and products to a broader group of people. So we've acquired another company. It was again last July, Dublin-based, called Playtech. And we've launched recently a first, I would say, it's not really truly a first consumer product. It's more a product for players as opposed just for teams. And we started to sell it towards the end of April to, I would say, sub-elite or semi-professional teams as well as to amateur teams and players. It's currently available on playtech.com. Also, we're selling on Amazon. So it's really very, very much of a first true move into more the consumer space for the company, with still in mind the very, very clear mission to help those players and team improve performance at whatever team sports they are practicing. So I think again, this is the first step of our strategy is horizontal penetration, integration with some other people, and I'm really happy to engage conversation with some of you today. It was that in mind. And the second part is that vertical move, really offering our tech and systems to a broader group of people. So this is, in brief, what I wanted to share with you. I'm also very, very happy to offer a very large discount on our first consumer product to the audience. So we'll circulate a voucher code to the organization of the event. So any one of you interested, please feel free to use that. And that's kind of it. Thank you very much for your attention. It was short. Hopefully I stick with timing.